So let's read Ephesians 2, 14 through 16, and then we'll see how this is basically saying the same thing I think Dunn's trying to bring out in Galatians 3:14. Quote, this is Ephesians 2. For he himself is our peace. He, Yeshua, is our Jew and Gentile. He's our peace, who has made us both. Who's the us both? It's us Jews and Gentiles, right? He has made us both one. Look at that unity. He's made us both one and has what? Broken down in his flesh, that is by his death on the cross. He has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. What is the dividing wall of hostility? It says Jewish-only nonsense that existed in the first century and today. It's this idea that you have to be a Jew in order to be a genuine covenant member. It's this works of the law that are described as covenant membership that begins when one is either circumcised at birth or circumcised as a proselyte. That's this dividing wall of hostility. And he did this by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, the dogma, if we want to read the Greek. Not by abolishing the law itself, because the law itself does not create an enmity between Jews and Gentiles. The law is properly understood. It was the distortion of the law into Jewish-only nationalistic terms that created this dividing wall of hostility and this ordinance that was expressed as halakha, as this dogma that the Jewish people were holding on to, this tradition of men that was created from the law of God. In other words, it was the distortion of Torah that created the dividing wall, and Yeshua abolished that particular distortion. He didn't abolish the true and genuine law of God. So he broke down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that he might do what? Create in himself one new man in place of two. Notice that there were two men, which would have been the Jew and the Gentile, but instead he created one new man, which is a one new Torah community that is united under the banner of Yeshua. So making peace, right? There's the destruction of that hostility, right? He makes peace between Jew and Gentile. And Paul goes on to say that he might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby killing the hostility. So we can see that in Ephesians 2 here, that Paul actually brings in both ideas of Yeshua's death, being Yeshua dying as the guilty person of Deuteronomy 21:23. Yeshua's death brought about not only the redemption that Adam's offspring needed, because we were slaves to sin and we were inheritors of death, right? The wages of sin is death, and because our federal head Adam passed that heritage down to his offspring, then Yeshua not only set us free from that, but Paul also in Ephesians explains that Yeshua's death accomplished something else. It not only set us free from the curse of death that was pronounced in the law, but it also, which is basically the ultimate curse of the law, but it also set us free from a curse of misusing the law for nationalistic purposes. The misuse that the Gentiles were in danger of falling into if they would have listened to the poison of the influencers and actually went through the conversion process and became Jews, so that they would supposedly become covenant members. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? That there was this big push in the first century to make the Torah a Jewish-only concept, this idea that Israel was a Jewish-only entity, and that all Jews and only Jews were the ones that were spoken about, where it says all Israel shares a place in the world to come. Jewish-only Israel shares a place in the world to come. And therefore, if you want to be counted as righteous, if you want to be counted as dikaiosune in the Greek, if you want to be counted among the blessings of Abraham and the children of Abraham, if you want to model after the faith of Abraham, if you want to be counted as blessed, etc., you must first become a Jew. So I say in conclusion in my commentary, put plainly, the Gentiles should not have been treated as second-class citizens in God's economy. They should not have been treated that way in the first century, and I'm here to tell you today, people, they still shouldn't be treated that way. You visit some Messianic congregations, and this nonsense is still taking place. We got Jewish leaders today who are Messianic, right? Messianic Jewish leaders of today Some are still saying that the Torah is not for Gentiles. It's a Jewish-only document. And then if the Gentiles wish to participate in Torah activities, then they're divinely invited to do so, or at best, it's something that they can do only if the Spirit leads them to, but they have no God-given mandate, as it were, to do some of the things that are supposedly Jewish-only commandments. And so this misuse of Torah extends down to our day. Unfortunately, in my opinion, some of the Messianic Jewish leaders of the day have not fully understood this central message in Paul. And they're not understanding that Paul would not want Gentiles to be thought of as kind of second-class citizens. So I go on to say that the blessing of Abraham that we read about in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, right? Through you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. We know that this is ultimately referring to the quintessential son of Abraham, which of course is Yeshua. So the blessing of Abraham, I say in my commentary, must extend to the Gentiles expressing faith in Yeshua. And how does it extend to them? As equal covenant members in Israel. Not second-class covenant members, equal covenant members. And if it doesn't do that, Israel is not Israel and the gospel is not the gospel. And that's the way Paul would have it. The message of the influencers was another gospel. Remember, we read about that in the first chapter of Galatians, a pseudo-gospel, another gospel, a false gospel, the one that if anyone comes preaching that, he is to be cursed. Even if he or someone or an angel from heaven comes teaching another gospel, let them be accursed. This other gospel is dangerous because it is a gospel that excludes Gentile covenant membership on equal footing. To turn a Gentile into Jew, supposedly, to turn a Gentile into Jew for the purpose of supposedly creating a genuine covenant member is to say that as a Gentile there is a deficiency in their ethnicity. You see what I mean? Paul doesn't see that Gentiles are deficient because in Paul's mind, God is the God of Jews and of Gentiles, and he says that explicitly in Romans 3:30 and 31, somewhere around there. So I say in my commentary in closing that the blessing of Abraham must extend to the Gentiles expressing faith in Yeshua as equal covenant members in Israel, or else Israel is not Israel and the gospel is not the gospel. Therefore, Dunn's explanation seems to fit more contextually with the situation facing the first century Judaisms and with Paul's reason for writing the letter to the Galatian congregations.